Sergeant Marcus Reeves had always seen things other soldiers couldn't see. As a child, his mother had taken him to 17 different eye doctors, convinced something was wrong with his vision. All 17 had delivered the same verdict. 2015's vision in daylight. Perfect. Nothing wrong. But at night, Marcus saw the world in ways that should have been impossible. When other children couldn't navigate a dark room without stumbling into furniture, Marcus moved through it like he was walking in daylight. Not with perfect clarity, but with an awareness that bordered on supernatural. He could see heat signatures in cold rooms. He could perceive movement in absolute darkness. He could distinguish between objects and shadows with an accuracy that made no physiological sense. His parents thought he was gifted. His schoolmates thought he was lying. By the time he joined the Army at 22, Marcus had spent his entire life assuming his night vision was just another one of those random biological gifts that some people had, like perfect pitch or an exceptional memory. He had no idea it would make him a legend. Marcus had been stationed at Firebase Viper in the Helmand province of Afghanistan for 4 months. It was late 2011, and the Taliban presence in the valley was constant and evolving. The base itself was well fortified, but the surrounding mountains provided countless vantage points for enemy snipers. In the past 3 months, 8 soldiers have been killed by sniper fire. 8 men who have been doing routine tasks, filling sandbags, checking supplies, walking to the latrine, when a single shot from somewhere in the darkness had ended their lives. The command was terrified, not of the enemy itself, but of the invisible threat, an enemy you can't see. In darkness where normal night vision scopes become useless, is an enemy that inspires a particular kind of dread. Captain David Hoffman called a briefing in the Firebase's command tent on a Thursday evening in late November. The tent smelled like diesel fuel and stale coffee. 20 soldiers sat on folding chairs, facing a map of surrounding terrain pinned to a wooden board. "We need to identify sniper positions," Captain Hoffman said, pointing to the dark mountains surrounding the firebase. "Our night vision scopes are inadequate for this terrain. The enemy has figured out how to position themselves in shadows and gaps where our equipment can't penetrate. We need a solution." Lieutenant James Chun, the base's intelligence officer, stood up. "We're requesting drone surveillance with thermal imaging," Lieutenant Chun said. "But command says we don't have assets available for another 72 hours. Until then, we're vulnerable." The room was silent. 72 hours could mean 72 more deaths. That's when Sergeant Marcus Reeves spoke up from the back of the tent. "Sir, I can find them." Everyone turned to look at him. Marcus was a quiet soldier, competent, reliable, but not someone who usually volunteered for high-visibility operations. Captain Hoffman raised an eyebrow. "Find who, Sergeant?" "The snipers, sir. I can locate them tonight." There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. Captain Hoffman exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Chun. "How?" Captain Hoffman asked. "I can see in the dark, sir, better than any equipment we have. I need to go out on foot, move through the valleys, and scout the likely sniper positions. I can map out where they are without engaging them." Another silence, longer this time. "That's a suicide mission, Sergeant," Captain Hoffman said quietly. "You'd be moving through hostile territory at night, alone with minimal backup. The enemy would see you before you saw them." "No, sir," Marcus said. "They wouldn't, not in darkness." Captain Hoffman didn't believe him. None of them did, but he was desperate enough to listen. "Show me," Hoffman said, "during daylight. Show me that you can see things the rest of us can't." The next morning, Marcus stood with Captain Hoffman on the highest point of Firebase Viper, looking out over surrounding terrain. The valley below was a maze of ravines, rock formations, and sparse vegetation. In the distance, the mountains rose like dark teeth against the pale sky. There, Marcus pointed to a rocky outcropping approximately 2 kilometers away. "There's a man in that depression, approximately 100 meters up from the base of the rocks. He's wearing a brown coat. He has a rifle, looks like an AK-47. Captain Hoffman looked through binoculars. He looked and looked and looked. "I don't see anything," he said finally. "Left side of the main rock formation. There's a shadow. That's the depression he's in. He's sitting with his back against the rocks." Hoffman adjusted his binoculars. He still saw nothing but rock and shadow. "You're seeing things that aren't there, Sergeant." "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "I understand how that sounds." But then Hoffman's radio crackled. It was Corporal Torres, positioned on the opposite side of the base with rifle scope. "Sir, we have a target acquired on that ridge, approximately 2 kilometers northeast. One tangible, male, armed with rifle. Do we have clearance to engage?" Hoffman's face went pale. He looked at Marcus. "How did you know?" "I can see him, sir. I've been able to see like this my whole life. In daylight, it's nothing special. But at night, when everyone else is blind, I can see thermal signatures, heat outlines, movement. I can see in darkness like other people see in daylight." Hoffman lowered his binoculars. "If this is real, Sergeant, we could end this sniper problem tonight." "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "I believe I can." Planning began immediately. Captain Hoffman called in his senior staff. They reviewed maps, identified likely sniper positions, and calculated distances and approach vectors. The plan was simple. Marcus would move out of fire base at 0200 hours, navigate through the valleys, and locate enemy sniper positions. He would mark each location using GPS coordinates. He would not engage. He would gather intelligence, then return to the fire base before dawn. No backup, no radio communication except for emergency situations. Just Marcus, moving through the darkness, hunting hunters. At 0145 hours, Marcus did a final weapons check. His M4 carbine was loaded and ready, but he knew he probably wouldn't need it. His advantage was stealth and sight. The moment he fired a weapon, he would lose both. Lieutenant Chin approached him in the darkness outside the firebase gate. "You don't have to do this," Chin said quietly. "If this goes wrong, if you get killed or captured, the responsibility is on Captain Hoffman and me. You can refuse the mission." Marcus looked at the lieutenant. 8 soldiers are dead, sir. 8 men who were just doing their jobs, and some invisible enemy took them away. If I can stop that, I have to try. Chin nodded. He understood. He just didn't believe Marcus could actually do what he was claiming. At 0200 hours, the gate opened. Marcus moved out into the darkness, and the world transformed. In daylight, Marcus was a good soldier with exceptional eyesight. In darkness, he became something else entirely. His pupils dilated to impossible widths. His brain processed light at frequencies other humans couldn't detect. The darkness that rendered other soldiers essentially blind became, for Marcus, a landscape he could navigate with almost perfect clarity. He could see the thermal signature of a sleeping lizard on a rock 40 meters away. He could detect the body heat of a man behind a ridge 800 meters distant. He could perceive the faint traces of recent passage, disturbed soil, displaced vegetation, the lingering warmth where a person had been sitting. For the next 4 hours, Marcus moved through the valley like a ghost. He found the first sniper position at 0245 hours. 2 men in a rocky depression, their body heat glowing in Marcus's vision like campfires. He marked the coordinates and moved on. The second position was more sophisticated. 3 men in a fortified position, with supplies and ammunition cached nearby. Marcus noted everything: the arrangement, the weapons, the escape routes. The third position revealed a heavy machine gun. Marcus's heartbeat accelerated. This was a significant military asset, probably responsible for at least some of the fire base's casualties. The fourth position was abandoned but recently used. Still warm rocks, fresh footprints, evidence of occupation within the last few hours. The fifth position was occupied by a single sniper with what looked like a high-powered rifle, the kind of weapon that could reach the fire base from this distance. Marcus watched him for 5 minutes, noting his positioning, his visibility into the fire base, the trajectory of potential shots. By 0600 hours, as dawn began to break and the stars faded toward the eastern horizon, Marcus had mapped out 5 distinct enemy sniper positions. He had coordinates for all of them. He had tactical information about each. And he had done exactly what he'd promised. He had completed the mission without firing a single shot. He returned to Firebase Viper as the sun was rising, moving carefully in increasing light, aware that he was now potentially visible to the same snipers he'd been hunting. Captain Hoffman was waiting at the gate with Lieutenant Chun and a medical team, convinced that Marcus would return dead or dying. Instead, Marcus walked through the gate standing upright, fully operational, carrying a datapad with 5 precisely marked GPS coordinates. All of them, Marcus said, handing the pad to Hoffman. 5 sniper positions. I have defensive layouts, equipment inventories, and patrol patterns of the last 2 hours of darkness. Hoffman stared at the data. Then he looked at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. You actually did it? Hoffman said quietly. Yes, sir. You went out into darkness where 5 enemy snipers are positioned, and you located all 5 of them, and you came back alive and undetected, without firing a single shot. Yes, sir. The darkness is my advantage. I saw them. They didn't see me. Within an hour, Hoffman had called in Apache attack helicopters with thermal imaging and rocket pods. By 1,000 hours, all 5 sniper positions had been neutralized through coordinated airstrikes. The attack helicopters used Marcus's coordinates to ensure precision strikes. When the dust settled, the sniper threat to Firebase Viper had been effectively eliminated. 23 enemy combatants were killed in the strikes. 0 civilians. 0 American casualties. In the following days, the story of what Marcus had done spread through the firebase and beyond. Soldiers who had been terrified of invisible enemies in the darkness now had a hero, a man who had proven that darkness could be conquered, that the enemy's strongest advantage could be turned against them. But more importantly, the command structure recognized what Marcus represented, an unduplicated asset with a capability that no amount of technology could replicate. Marcus began conducting night reconnaissance missions on a regular basis. Over the next 6 months, his intelligence work led to the neutralization of 7 more sniper positions, 2 Taliban command centers, and 3 weapons caches. His information was always accurate. His situational awareness was always perfect. His ability to move through darkness undetected while perceiving everything around him became legendary. Other soldiers started calling him the Ghost. Not because he was deadly, but because he moved through darkness like he wasn't quite real, a phantom intelligence gatherer who could see what others couldn't and survive what others couldn't survive. But Marcus himself understood something more complex about what he was doing. He wasn't superhuman. He simply had a gift that aligned perfectly with the circumstances. In a different conflict, in a different terrain, his night vision would have been merely interesting. But in the mountains of Afghanistan, moving through valleys at night, hunting enemies that relied on darkness for concealment, his gift became necessity. Marcus served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Over those 3 years, his night operations prevented an estimated 47 American deaths. The sniper threat that had paralyzed Firebase Viper for months was essentially eliminated through his reconnaissance work. His intelligence led to the capture or killing of 93 enemy combatants. He returned to the United States in 2014 with a Bronze Star, a Meritorious Service Medal, and a promotion to Master Sergeant. But more importantly, he returned with something else. Proof that sometimes the most extraordinary advantage is simply seeing what others have missed. In the years after his service, Marcus would occasionally be asked about his night vision, how it worked, whether it could be replicated, whether other soldiers possessed similar capabilities. His answer was always the same: I don't know. I just see. What he understood, though, was something deeper. The soldiers who had doubted him initially hadn't been wrong to be skeptical. His claims sounded impossible. It seemed like either delusion or self-aggrandizement. But his willingness to prove it, to demonstrate his capabilities in daylight before asking them to trust him in darkness, had been the key. Trust, he learned, requires evidence. Confidence requires demonstration. And sometimes the most valuable people in any organization are those with unusual gifts that no one understands until the moment those gifts become absolutely necessary. Captain Hoffman, the officer who had doubted Marcus initially, would later write in his official report, Sergeant Reeves possesses a capability that is as rare as it is valuable. His natural night vision exceeds any equipment in our arsenal. More importantly, his judgment in using that capability is flawless. He sees not just what is there, but what it means. That combination of perception and wisdom is the mark of an exceptional soldier. The 5 sniper positions that Marcus had found that first night became the foundation of everything that followed. They proved to the command structure that Marcus's abilities were real. They proved to the soldiers at Firebase Viper that darkness could be conquered. And they proved to Marcus himself that sometimes the greatest victories come not from overwhelming force, but from simply seeing what others have missed. Years later, when Marcus would teach young soldiers about night operations and reconnaissance, he would always return to that first mission. They didn't believe, he would say, and I don't blame them. My claims sounded impossible, but I knew what I could do, and I proved it, not with words, but with results. That's how you earn trust, not by demanding it, but by delivering evidence. The enemy snipers who had terrorized Firebase Viper had relied on darkness. They had believed that night made them invisible. Marcus Reeves had proven them wrong. In darkness, he was more dangerous than they were. And in proving that, he had changed the equation of that war. 1 night, 5 coordinates, and no shots fired.